2014, MSA West partnered with ISPU, which is the Institute for Social Policy and Understanding, and we conducted a survey. And this survey was done at our conference. What I want to do first is contextualize the results, right? Because when it comes to research, it's really important to know who was the audience that participated in this. So keep in mind these factors when you look at the results. Nonetheless, these results are confirmed by many of the continuous informal assessments that we do of college students every single year, right? We're constantly engaging and interacting with MSAs and Muslim college students that are not affiliated with their MSAs, SJP students, students from many different clubs on campus, right? And we do a continuous assessment. And so there were 650 people who participated in this survey, 516 of them completed it. The people who took the survey are more likely to be female, born to immigrant parents, from affluent families, practicing Muslims, and engaged in MSA West work. Like, think the type of people that are gonna go to the MSA West conference, right? So keep that in mind while also knowing that this data is still really important. So one of the first aspects that has an impact on Muslim student well-being is mental health. And we found that 14% of respondents reported attempting suicide. Now, this might seem like a small number to some of you, but this is actually a pretty major number. Muslim college students are a niche, right? This is not the whole population. And this is a pretty big number to get out of people who attend conferences and who are involved in the Muslim community, right? And the even more staggering statistic is that 1 in 4 economically disadvantaged students reported attempting suicide. That is huge, and I want us to sit with that number for a moment, because this is important to keep in mind, right? Not all Muslim college students are engaged in MSA. Not all Muslim college students are active. Muslim college students come from so many different backgrounds, so many different experiences, and it's important to keep in mind that when we talk about supporting Muslim college students, we have to be talking about supporting every single Muslim college student and how that looks, because that doesn't always look like just supporting MSAs, right? MSAs are important, but Muslim college students extend beyond that. A lot of Muslim college students cannot participate in their MSAs because they have to work second jobs, they have to do so much other work, right? Being involved in campus is a privilege that we need to recognize, right? And so we need to be paying attention to how students who are not involved in community are being impacted, because they are part of our community and they matter, right? In terms of discrimination, we wanted to highlight the gender-based discrimination statistics that we found. There is so much data on discrimination that we got from this survey, but some of the main ones are that Muslim women reported facing more gender-based discrimination from within their faith community, 63%, and outside of their faith community, 54%. These are pretty major numbers. The discrepancy here, 63 to 28, is pretty big. And so we know that Muslim women receive less support and experience more discrimination in their community and outside of their community, right? And we have to keep that in mind. What we also know related to gender-based discrimination is that women have less access to Muslim scholarship and community, right? Women are more likely, we found in this survey, they're more likely to reach out to their family and friends and parents and the internet in order to answer faith-based questions. This is important to note, because while reaching out to family is important, sometimes there's a lot of misinformation, and it's important to be able to go to a scholar, right? But our Muslim women don't always have that access and don't always feel comfortable going to their Muslim spaces, right? And so that's important to know. Another thing related to our social justice, 22% of respondents who reported being involved in social justice advocacy reported attempting suicide. Our number of all participants was 14%, remember? 22% of social justice advocates. This means that there is a correlation between being involved in social justice advocacy and struggling more with your mental health and with suicide specifically. This is important to know, because as we said, right now, Muslim college students are going through a major crisis, right? They're all advocating in support of Palestine and other causes at a rate that's really high right now. And so this is something we have to keep in mind, because if we don't support our students right now, in this critical moment, this is what we could be seeing pretty soon, right? And this survey was done in 2019, right? This was during Trump's era, right? It's important to keep in mind the political context, and to know that we're currently right now in a different political context, and one that's also equally important. What we also found is that students reported that the ones who were wearing visible religious symbols were more likely to fear attacks from white supremacists. And then I will pass it off to Hasna to talk about the professional development piece.
Jazakallah khair, Sumaya. I know that there's a lot of data and a lot of information, and we're throwing a lot of percentages, but this is really heavy information, and feel free to, at the Q&A, if you want us to cover anything in specific or go more in depth, we're happy to. These are just some of the top level highlights. When it comes down to professional development, we recognize first and foremost that there is not a lot of accessibility of professional development resources and support for Muslim college students, and that's reflected in the data. So majority of women, 84%, that's almost a little bit more than 4/5 of Muslim women who took the survey, and 80%, exactly 4/5 of the men, report receiving parental support for their career choices as their main form. So just their parents, right? 37% of women and 44% of men report strongly believing that they know what career path they want to pursue. 17% of women and 34% of men say they strongly believe they will find a satisfying job after graduation. That's very low. 17% of women and 34% of men feel confident that they're going to find a satisfying job. So most of our student base does not feel very confident that they're going to land a job that they're actually content with. And then lastly, women are also half as likely as men to report having access to strong mentorship from the Muslim professionals in their chosen field. So women have less access to professionals in the field that they choose to work in. And that's also another problem, because it makes that journey significantly more difficult. And then kind of switching gears, economically disadvantaged respondents, as compared to wealthier respondents, are less likely to strongly agree that they will find a satisfying job after graduation. Similar situation. Those who come from lower socioeconomic statuses do not have the confidence that they will be able to land a job that they genuinely feel content with, essentially. So that job satisfaction is going to be lower. And just to kind of also add a little bit of context within professional development. As a Muslim community, we are in a place, alhamdulillah, where we are constantly striving to uplift the entire community through leadership development and just development of young people in general, because these are essentially the leaders of our future masajid. So it is very critical to understand that things like mental health, things like professional development, things like spiritual development, discrimination, all of these key statistics and key ideologies are what essentially strengthen and empower our young people to strengthen and empower future generations of masajid, families, Islamic institutions, etc., to be healthy, stronger, more economically stable. So it's really critical to understand that this is not just a problem that is is addressing a certain demographic. This is the future generation of our leadership and our institution. So it's really critical to kind of contextualize that.
Thank you, Hasna and Sumaya. Okay, so I'm going to add a couple more points to this a little bit. So going back to professional development, we talked about how this is pretty low for women. If you also look at the statistic for men, that's 24%. That's not even 1 in 4. It's barely 1 in 4 men, young boys, are also feeling like they have support for the types of careers that they want to go into, or career mentorship and advice. That's a big deal for us, because we understand that as a generation, as a community, for us to build generational wealth, we need to make sure that our students are set up for success. So this is where we're going to go into kind of some of the larger picture things. So as you all know, I've been involved in MSA West for about 10 years now. A few years back, when we actually did this survey, we were really astonished by some of the statistics that came out of it. And then the pandemic hit. And we were seeing a lot of students saying, we can't afford rent. A lot of international students saying that we're going to get deported. A lot of students who are saying that they don't know how they're going to continue on their studies. They didn't have certain access to just like doing our virtual schooling, so on and so forth. And then jobs and internships opportunities, lots of them fell through because of the pandemic. So what we did as MSA West is we took a long, hard look at ourselves and we said, are we actually servicing Muslim college students? And we said the answer was no. We're not holistically servicing Muslim college students. We are providing certain programs, which is really necessary, but we're not able to, at the moment, provide a whole holistic wraparound services that we need, that our students need. So I mentioned this because we actually looked at a couple other communities. The Jewish community being one of them. They have an organization called Hillel. How many of y'all have heard of Hillel? Oh, all the hands in the room almost go up. Hillel has about 800 chapters across the world. 840 campuses globally. Each of their campus chapters has their own staff, and some of their campus chapters have physical spaces just for Jewish students on campus. And each campus chapter provides career services, mental health support, basic needs support, and academic advising for their Jewish students. In addition to that, if you go onto the Hillel website, there is a whole tab on just how to talk about politics in the Middle East. Because for them, when a Jewish student starts as a freshman, they may not know about Israel at all, but their goal is to have them come out of college as a staunch Zionist. And they are successful in doing that. We have heard many stories of people saying, I had a Jewish friend, and they started off and they didn't really care about Israel. They didn't really care much about it. By the time that they were second year in college, they were a staunch Zionist. Because Hillel boasts that they touch 90% of Jewish leadership. So Jewish people who end up going on in government positions, who end up in media, who end up in at the head CEOs of companies, they have gone through some sort of, 90% of those have gone through some sort of Hillel program or pipeline. So it's clear, and they've been around for 100 years. They're very, very well organized, very well funded. And just to give you some statistics, UCLA's chapter alone, its operating budget, anyone can guess how much their operating budget is? Anyone?
2 million.
Sorry?
2 million.
Close, it's 1.5 million for just their UCLA chapter. And there's 840 campuses across the globe. UCLA MSA, probably maybe 40K, I don't know, 50K, something like that. Just to give an example of what we're talking about. It's not to ding our community. We have dealt with state-based violence. We are still building. We also didn't start 100 years ago. We're in a different position, but we are looking at other communities to see what have they done, what has worked, and how can we obviously not replicate exactly what they're doing, but look at it as a model. So MSA West, we looked at that and we said, okay, we want to be able to do that. Obviously, we take baby steps. Baby steps because nobody's going to be able to have 800 campuses across the country or whatnot, or across the world within a couple of years. So one of the things that we kind of decided to do is we hired a strategic planning consultant, and we just finished our strategic plan last month, and we identified our core areas that we want to focus on. So I'm going to talk about a little bit about that. So our current services, we have core programs. ISA cohort, which stands for Islamic Sacred Activism Cohort. This cohort specifically focuses on training 25 to 30, if not more, students on the basics around organizing, advocacy, and how to do community organizing on your campus. So whether that be, I think our past campaign was around mental health, and how students can advocate for getting Muslim mental health professionals on their campuses. Then we have our, as many of you all know, the MSA West Conference. We also have a Servant Leadership Summit, which basically is a 3-day training retreat where we invite MSA leaders as well as student leaders for 3 days at Fresno, and we train them on all the basics of how to run their MSAs and organize and so on and so forth. In addition to that, we do MSA coaching. We do rapid response in situations like this, where there's 1,000,001 things happening. We're there to help people, MSAs, through tough times. We do leadership development, advocacy trainings. All this is great, well and good. I am the chair of the organization. I will tell you, this is great. This is not nearly enough and not nearly what we should be mainly focusing on. So what we need, and I'm going to show you a graphic that's a little bit robust, but hang in with me really quickly. So needed services, career counseling, academic support, recruiting and placement, mental health services, expanding chaplaincy. Many of you all go to campuses where there are chaplains from IOK. Our Northern California campuses have been saying for maybe 6-7 years now that they've been needing chaplaincy. Basic needs, and we can't afford to pay for a full-time chaplain because chaplains require a livable wage. Basic needs, scholarships, and early career and life training. There's a lot here. We're focusing on one primary one, housing a lot of other things within this one. I keep knocking this over. So one of our major focuses is moving forward is going to be around professional development, because we recognize that all the skills, I'm going to talk to some of the alumni in the room. How many of y'all feel like your MSA experience helped train you for your job? Okay, nice, nice. For how many of y'all felt like it didn't help train you for your job? Okay. So majority of the alumni said yes. We recognize that the most pivotal time of a person's life is the time where they're in college, from 18 to generally 25. If we as a community, as an American Muslim community, can figure out how to invest in students or invest in people during this time, we're gonna be in a really good place 15, 20 years down the line. If we're able to give a student, when they walk in on the campus, access to a career trajectory, if they're interested, along with, if they need along that journey, services like mental health support or basic needs support through partnerships and whatnot, then we know that on the longer term, we're not gonna see a talent drain. And what I mean by a talent drain is that we see a lot of people go to college, they grow up in the Muslim community, they go to the masjid, they go to college, they graduate, they don't get back involved. And we see that. We see people leaving, exiting the community for a variety of different reasons. We recognize there's a lot of other reasons, a lot of dissatisfaction with community spaces, things of that nature. But in order to even get to that spot, there needs to be a pipeline to funnel people back in. So one thing that we're trying to do is set students up for success in their professional development skill set, and then funnel people back into the community. Because, and I don't necessarily mean working in the Muslim community, I mean volunteer community service work a lot of times too. So I mention all of this because right now, this is one of the biggest areas that if we can get this right as a community, we are gonna be in a really good spot. A lot of other communities, they have been around for a while, so they know the systems in place. So when I say the systems, I mean, they know how to talk to their local representatives. They know what to do if their jobs and their HR teams come after them for a post on their personal Instagram account. Right now, we're seeing a lot of people, alumni, who are don't know what to do when their company has released a one-sided statement on Israel-Palestine. If we can get our students to have a basic level of civic literacy and understanding around what to do in navigating their workspace, that'll be extremely instrumental in becoming a power base and a power structure. Does that make sense? Yes. Cool. Yeah. I'm getting some head nods. Hopefully, not everyone is checked out. And then actually, anything to add, Hasna or Sumaya? No. Okay. So we're gonna go into questions. Yes. Where's that slide? This one. So we're going to end off with that and go to questions because we did want to have a lot of time for questions. So we can take questions from the audience, but we are also, if folks have questions on Slido or questions they want to ask anonymously, please go onto slido.com and put in this number. So we have a hand up. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think we have one on the thing.
Oh, okay. Can we do that one? Yeah, go ahead.
I can just be loud. So I found it interesting what you mentioned about the Hillel at UCLA. They have like a $2 million budget. What sort of revenue streams do you guys think you could be able to target to sort of match that at some point in the future?
That's a good question. So right now, one of the big things is that we don't even get community donations, just very frankly. That's a big thing. So we are working on getting our alumni to even be monthly donors, to going to high-level donors. We like to think that we're not a powerful community. We're very resourced, actually. We have many multimillionaires in our community. We have like thousands of multimillionaires in our community in Southern California alone, and just kind of having them being a part of their portfolio. Because every year they do donor giving and being part of their portfolio. Long term, I think corporate donations is another thing that we can explore. Grants and foundations. Right now, a lot of our budget is being primarily 70%. We're getting from grants. So kind of expanding on grants from foundations as well. So I hope that answers your question, but like for example, long term, we want to be able to have staff on campuses to help be like mentors and whatnot. And I think that can help with also bringing in more revenue as well. Does that answer your question? Now we have a question.
You want to give it to Sumaya?
Yeah. Samantha.
The next question is, how can Muslim organizations help you reach your goals? And another one related to that are, what are ways an organization can work with you to strengthen the leadership and capacity building of young Muslims?
Can I take this one?
Yeah. No wire.
I
Assalamualaikum everyone. Really great questions. Sorry, I'll stand up so you guys can see me in the back. But fantastic questions. I think it's critical, one, that our community, first and foremost, needs to shift its mindset. There's a bit of a gap. As someone that's worked for MSA West, I've also worked in MSAs, and I've also worked with Masajid that services youth under college age, up until the age of 18. There is a really huge gap within our community of feeling this urgent need to resource and support financially the younger youth, right, which is up until the age of 18. And then once people hit 18 and they move out, they're a great resource to utilize, but not one that we're invested in funding. So Masajid are kind of asking for support, because Masajid are also most of the time under-resourced as well, if we want to recognize that. And then once they graduate, they're expected to donate with the job they barely got that barely pays the bills, right? So there is something missing here, which is, as a community, we need, one, individuals, so folks in this room, outside of this room, we need individuals to be committing to youth, college age folks, right? Investing in whatever ways that can be done is supporting your MSA West, supporting your MSA locally. It can also look like going to your masjid board and being like, hey, we need to invest in the local MSA. We need to invest in organizations like MSA West or any other organization that's resourcing students for mental health, professional development, etc., right? And so it's going to require masajid support, right? Recognizing that maybe 1% of the donations that are coming into our organization or our masjid should be going to resourcing for Muslim college students. That is tailored to them in a unique way by professionals that can handle it, right? Not every masjid has the eye and has the understanding of what's going on for college students. So each masjid should really be on board. Two, we partner with a lot of nonprofit organizations, alhamdulillah, who are doing amazing work in the community. And we've worked with them consistently. So being in a space where we can continue to they can continue to support us and we can continue to support them. But more importantly, I think it's really critical that donors that have the capacity, because if we're being quite frank and quite honest, our community, oftentimes the folks that really have the diligence to support institutions like this are not making the most money, aka alumni, right? Young people who still felt the pressure and the passion of what was going on. They know the need, they know the struggle, but they don't have the means quite yet. The parents or the older generation that never quite organized and kind of was fending for themselves on campus have a bit of a disconnect about how dire the circumstances are. So I would say that the older generation understanding and taking it to their organizations, taking it to their businesses, and being committed to servicing and funding these particular organizations and these student groups. So organizations, I think, having conversations and bringing in the need to support Muslim college students in their spaces is really critical. Fundraising is obviously a big thing, but just community support on like a cognizance level is really, 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 really the most critical piece at this point to be able to get to that next stage, inshallah. I don't know if you want to add anything, Bushra.
We have a couple other questions, but I was going to add, and this kind of answers one of the questions on the Slido around alumni and just general community viewpoints or perspectives. I was on the Shore Council board. Shore Council is an umbrella organization for nonprofits in Southern California. I served one term along with Dr. Sabah and Always Data Boy and all of those folks. And one of the things that I heard often from people in the community, whenever they hear MSA West, they hear MSA. And so they think MSA West is just another MSA, and a lot of times people think when community members hear MSA, they think a bunch of college students, it's scrappy, it's not really, I'm not gonna put my money there. And honestly, that's kind of a really difficult thing, because that's very hard. We have a legitimacy and a perception issue. And I say this because we're actually going to be embarking on a rebrand and doing likely a name change to deal with that specific perception and legitimacy issue. But in addition to that, as people who are either graduated or just community members and parents in the room, and people who are in college who are going to graduate one day, knowing that actually, like, for MSA West, we're a nonprofit organization. We're a smaller nonprofit, but when I was on Shura board, I remember seeing these multi-million-dollar Muslim organizations that I was like, these were not run well at all, very frankly. But yet people would say, oh, but even MSA West can give their yearly annual membership fee. We would struggle to get multi-million-dollar organizations to pay their Shura Council $500 membership fee, but smaller nonprofits would be able to pay it like that. And I say that because a lot of times, just because a nonprofit is smaller, it actually means there's probably a lot more people involved in keeping eyes on things than some of these larger nonprofits. They're also doing great work, of course, but the legitimacy issue has to be something that we call out and kind of also look at and say, maybe do I have certain perceptions that I can kind of push back on myself as well. So I want to mention that point. we have a lot of questions on Slido. I don't know if I'm answering.
I can read one of them off.
We have, alhamdulillah, which is really beautiful, jazakallah khair, for folks that are asking in the Slido, like, how can my organization support, how can we support, how can we get alumni to support, how can we donate? These are questions that, inshallah, if you guys are interested, you'd like to find out how you can plug in, whether it's with your time or with your finances or with your network, please come speak to us after, inshallah. We have lots of places to plug folks in. And then, yeah, inshallah, alhamdulillah, we're really excited about kind of the prospects. We just need alhamdulillah, folks that are interested, we'd love to connect with you and explain to you more and see how we can get you engaged.
We have 2 hands in person, so you can go.
Okay. One of the things I also wanted to emphasize is that we are not just doing this in order for college students to have a successful career, right? That is not the purpose here, right? It's one thing that's important, yes. The ultimate purpose, though, is to raise and build leaders and members of the community who we will all go to Jannah with, right? That's the ultimate goal. In order to reach that goal and to build leaders and to build community members, right? Not everyone has to be a leader, right? Just to build community members who are strong in their religious identity, who have resources, who know that they're not alone in anything that they go through. That is important and critical, right? And so everything we're doing here is in order to reach that goal, right? And along the way, we set smaller goals, right? Like supporting, making sure that Muslim college students can achieve success professionally, right? Because that's important as well, right? And so we have all of these different markers of what success looks like, right? But we also want to keep in mind what the ultimate success and purpose is. And that's what ultimately we're trying to reach.
Really quick, I saw a couple hands up. I saw one in here and then one in the back earlier, but for questions in person, feel free.
Yes, so you have website with all the information or contacting you and all that?
Yes.
You want to go website?
Yeah. So we do have a website, and we do have our contact information for folks who want to talk to us afterwards. Please come talk to us outside the room as well, but we have our contact information on the website. But in addition to that, we are definitely welcoming partnerships with organizations, ways to kind of really uniquely handle and tackle some of the issues that we're seeing. So please do come and talk to us afterwards. There was a question right here, yes?
So I know you touched on alumni base. Sorry. I know you touched on building like an alumni base. So what would you recommend for MSAs who are trying to do that? Like, what's the best way to start supporting our alumni, but also trying to get them back involved?
Yeah, that's a great question. Do you want to?
I can try.
Yep. You want to repeat the question?
Yeah, so the question was, for MSAs that want to kind of build their alumni base, how should you guys go about doing that? To be quite honest, I think there's only one MSA that has successfully created an alumni network and base that they can tap into for resourcing, funding, and support, which is UCLA, which is why when she said 40 to 50K, a lot of people go, oh, pretty impressive. That's because that's the only MSA that actually has that network. The rest of MSAs typically have a budget of no more than 5K for the whole year. And their entire goal is, whatever we start the year off, we just want to make sure we make that money back. We have to break even. So typically speaking, MSAs across the board are having the same problem. It is very hard to maintain investment from alumni, to be quite frank. Which is why having an institution that's dead, and it takes a lot of resourcing, it takes a lot of effort. For those who don't understand kind of the dynamic of an MSA leadership role, they can typically barely keep up with the responsibilities of just holding community spaces, events, and providing basic support. A lot of times our MSA leaders are treated like chaplains or shuyukh, and they don't have any formal training, but because there's no other resources or access, they have to play like 15 different roles. Not forgetting the fact that they're still under the age of 22, they still have to hold a job, they're still in school and responsible for getting good grades, they still have families, they still have friends, they still have to be networking and trying to figure out their career and doing internships. There's a lot going on their plate. So when we have unrealistic expectations of what MSA should be doing, right? Why isn't the MSA doing this? Or why isn't the MSA fundraising? And we need to get the alumni involved. It's a limited capacity issue. So to be quite honest, it's not always the best use of time for MSAs to be trying to engage their alumni, because alumni are not always the easiest to get a hold of. And then over time, you lose connection, the new board comes in, it's like starting from scratch. It's difficult, to be quite honest, which is why what we're saying is after years and years and years and years of seeing MSAs struggle with this, it just makes more sense for there to be an institution responsible for this full time and plugging in those alumni and that support to the MSA so that they don't have to be burdened with doing that work. It is a lot of time. It is a lot of effort, and a lot of times these students don't even have access to these alumni. So it's almost a full-time job. And a lot of times MSA leaders are actually taking on a part-time or a full-time job just by organizing for their students that could be between 20 to 200 students on campus. So I don't necessarily know if I would say, yeah, go ahead, it's the best use of time, or this is how you should do it strategically, this is the best way we've seen. We haven't seen many, to be quite honest. UCLA, their network has been going strong for like over 10, 15 years. So it was just a dedicated group of alumni, and they wanted to stay in contact, and so they actually are the ones who are managing themselves. So that's typically what it takes. The students themselves, it's very hard to get alumni to commit. So, which is why we're also really encouraging alumni that are inspired and would like to provide their support. Please come talk to us. We can plug you in, inshallah.
Yeah, and just to add on to that, I would say it starts with an educational piece. Is a lot of times alumni don't even realize, the power that they have. I think recently there was an alumni letter that was written to, USC? USC organized their alumni to write a letter to administration because of the professor that said racist remarks to students that were protesting. That's a power move. When you have like hundreds, if not I think thousands of alumni from USC, which USC really prides itself on its alumni network, generally speaking, not just the MSU, to go and email administration and present all the names of the people and where they're at now. So I think what Hasna was saying, I think it's an educational piece around like alumni also realizing it's the importance of them being involved, and not just being involved, but giving support, whether that be through mentorship or financially. Those are the two major things I would say are really, really needed. And if you want to come talk to us afterwards about looking at models and structures that have worked, that's great. But and we're happy to do that. But like Hasna said, the long-term goal is to pivot from volunteer-run alumni structures and go towards staff-funded alumni models where we can actually organize the community and the professionals in our community. Oh, and with that, we are done with our session. Wow, that hour went by really quick. We welcome questions, and we might need to take those questions outside too, because I want to be respectful of the session afterwards. But if anyone has any questions, please feel free to talk to us. Thank you all. Assalamu alaikum.